Hey Raj, welcome to the Rona Morale podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. It's a lovely sunny day in London today, so all cheers and sort of happiness today.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, to the listeners out there, I am hugely delighted to introduce you to Raj, who um, has a couple of similar passions to me, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But Raj founded the Goodman Lantern, which is very much a business around native English content writing. He has successfully achieved 3 startups, and I know that you just under £50 million in income success for different businesses. You were also the Business Week's Europe's Young Entrepreneur in 2007, so congratulations. And also you were the Revolutions magazine's 50 most influential people in digital in 2009. So with that, obviously success came, and you've had quite a lot of national press exposure too. So huge kudos to you and congratulations. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is how you're applying your business and also female empowerment, which as a woman is an interesting topic for me, especially coming from a man. So, we hopefully we won't fall out over this, but it's really about how your vision behind it, why you're doing it, why it's important, but more importantly, what the listeners can take from it. Can anyone else out there apply that to their daily life? So over to you.
Well, firstly, Ron, nice to be in the podcast. Really excited to have a chat with you. Um, I think this challenge of women empowerment has been around for way too long. Not too many, hundreds of years ago, there was a challenge for women to even to vote, for example, in elections. And till recently, in some countries, they were not allowed to even drive, for instance. We need to do more to 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 give them a voice and give them an opportunity. And not only just have those fluffy, nice words to say, but actually make some good, tangible actions to make it happen for everyone. It is. I think before we got on this chat today, we spoke about how leaders in the global economy where pandemic was hit, every country was affected. Obviously, this coronavirus, COVID-19, but countries which had women leaders outperformed their male counterparts every time.
Yeah.
Women make brilliant leaders. We just haven't given them the opportunity to do so more and more, especially us in the UK. We should be empowering them to be in boardrooms more,
Yeah.
to be the top leaders in the market.
Because it always seems like the token female in the boardroom is the HR director.
Unfortunately, yes, that's the stereotype, and um, it's been way too long like that. I think we need to change this now. We need to have leaders who are leading in every department, as it were, and that should be. It could be anyone. And I think the reality is we should always have the option to allow people to have their opportunity. But women, for me, is important agenda because I've seen this in my own sort of growing up. There was a lot of inequality between male and female. I've seen family members who were very very smart, bright, brilliant, didn't get the same opportunity as their male counterparts. I think this thing that's just unfair overall, and I want to make a difference with her business, Goodman Lantern, and that's what it's all about for me at the moment.
So you're a new father as well, and you have
I am indeed.
a baby daughter.
Yes, 3.5 weeks old now.
Oh, congratulations. So I guess now more than ever, what was it your family and seeing that around you? What's driven you to put female empowerment into the mission and vision of your business? How are you actually doing it rather than these fluffy words?
Well, so obviously it's been many years that I've seen this. I had the fortune to be, traveling as a kid. I was born in Kuwait. I lived in India. I moved here at the UK when I was 19. So I've seen, and I've traveled quite a bit. Worked in Spain, for example. Did a lot of work in Latin America to a Spanish company. And I've seen this time and time again. that it, there is a point at which women can go to within a company structure, and then in some countries especially, the boardroom is full of men, and that's it. There is no growth opportunities for women at all,
Yeah.
which I feel is super unfair. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why can't women lead when the examples of women doing so well? We just talked about the politics, for example. Um, Also, for my daughter, I don't want to bring her up in this world which is unfair, and that she doesn't get the opportunity to be a leader within a company and beyond. I mean, it's not only about business, obviously, it's also about in life. They have to have all the opportunities which men do.
What do you think about, if flipping it on its head? And I guess I've had some of these thoughts as well. Is I went to work for a company and the CEO said to me, you know, only 2% of women get into kind of senior roles that have gone through university. How do you feel about that? Do you want to be the next CEO of this business? And I wasn't expecting the question, but I guess in a way it took me off guard. And as I've grown through my careers, I wonder if a lot of women just think, I actually don't want to be that. Is it just the impression that the boardroom gives, that women think, I don't want to be who I'm not. I don't want to be ruthless. I don't want to necessarily be white middle class aged male. And so I wonder if it's about them not wanting it as well as not having the opportunities, because my experience in boardrooms has been quite an interesting one. And I've never really been in a boardroom where I've thought, I want to be a part of this team.
It's a very fair point. I think the campaign which I am interested in is, if women want to do it, they should have the opportunity. That's the primary campaign which we are keen on. Secondly, it is about equal pay. This is one of the UN's SDGs number 5, which is, you know, there is a an imbalance in the pay, and it's well publicized in the UK with BBC, for example, where some of the BBC stars, the male counterparts, got more than their female colleagues, and again, that's another issue within Goodman Lantern, for example. Our policy is that you choose what you want to do, whether you are whether you're a full-time mom, you're a part-time mom, whether you want to go full-time on work, for example, or do part-time. You decide that, and it's all about the ability to choose. That's what we want to campaign for. It's not about forcing women to do something they don't want to do. At least from my experience, I've seen that women who we hire like flexibility. They like flexible hours, for example. And if we give them that, um, the results are fantastic. Every time we've hired someone for a role, they outshine their male counterparts every time within a company. But yes, there's a requirement so far which I've seen of flexibility. So flexible hours, for example,
Yeah.
Flexibility to choose their roles, for instance. But if you give women that, from my experience, the results, let's talk about ROI, for example, which I hate talking about, but the ROI is fantastic as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think as we've gone through 2020 and just hanging on by the skin of our teeth, I think that whole piece around flexibility, I think, is important, whether you're a stay-at-home dad or I think most women, I saw a really interesting article the other day. This lady's incredible, and she was just having this major rant going, my husband can just get up, go to work, he does his X amount of hours and he comes home, and I am still juggling the homework and the parties and the family arrangements and the holidays. And I think over the years, women have, of course, become much more involved in the financial income. There's many women now who are the main breadwinners, but they're still juggling all that other stuff. So I think flexibility is key, but I think it's about how do we give men that flexibility as well, so that maybe they take up that reign, as well as the women feeling like they need to do it. Maybe we're better organizers, maybe we spin plates better, I don't know. But what I don't want to do, I guess, in a way, is create a world where we're giving them flexibility, but that flexibility is really not taking any of that pressure away.
Yes, and I mean now, as you mentioned, being a new dad, this becomes even more obvious. There is this constant discussions which we have is like who does what. For example, who wakes up at 3 a.m. with nappy change, for instance, and from the very go, I put some ground rules. For example, and I told my wife Sue, listen, Sue, we need to make sure that you get out of the house more often from in the first week, second week, if you can. Obviously, she chose not to do that in the
Yeah.
first 2 weeks, but the third week she has, only because the stereotype is, you're a new mom, you stay home for a couple of months or beyond, and that leads to other problems like depression, for example. So I want to be there to be helpful. So I've reduced my hours, for example.
Yeah.
Now I work from 10 till 5. Before I used to work from like 8 till 8 sometimes, and weekends as well. But now reduce my hours. Friday, I try and take some time off, work from home if I can. The aim simply is to be there, be available. And there are some roles which I can't take. I can't feed my baby. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I can't do that. But there's some natural roles which I can do better. For example, put my baby to sleep because I can do that because I can rock her to sleep, and actually I really enjoy it. So I'm trying to do my bit to help and be equal in the partnership of our lives. And I invite more men to do that as well. I think more men should actually take on this role and be equal partners with their wives, girlfriends, other halves in life, and that will empower them as well.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one looking back to when I had my children. A lot of my friends, there was this kind of assumption that because the other partner, and primarily the man, is still getting up and going to work every day, so therefore let's don't disturb their sleep. Let's let them sleep, they're working. And at first I thought, well, there's kind of truth to that, but actually, you are working as a new mother, but you're doing something that has got no job description, you've got no training, there's no benefits, there's no sick pay, there's no pension, and you are just as tired. And I think my husband and I soon realized that we just had to take it in turns with the sleep. And I think that also needs to be recognized, that the person staying at home has this domestic engineer role, and that is, there's a reason why they use sleep deprivation in interrogation and torture training. And my God, it is brutal. And I think it's recognizing that maybe in organizations, men taking those shifts as well, so that the female can be somewhat less of a zombie every day.
I agree. I think also it comes down to the choice. And I think, as I mentioned before, we should give each man, woman the choice to do things and discuss things. I think every relationship is different. Every partnership is different. Sometimes women want to take a more active role in bringing up kids, and that's great. Sometimes it's sometimes there's men who want to do that as well. I think it's about discussions and choices, and we should allow people to have the choice, to make the choice, instead of saying because you are so and so, so you have to do this thing. That's what I think I want to change in the way I look at the world, and I want to create for my daughter in the
Yeah.
next few years.
So what about the male employees that you've got? Do you talk to them about flexibility, knowing that they may be fathers, and how that can work for them to support their partner?
Well, we treat them equally. There isn't a distinction between male and female. I don't look at race, gender. That's not what I look at. That's not the way we function. We are designed to be an equal opportunity company, and we're a small company. I mean, we aren't Procter and Gamble or Unilever, for example. We're a small company, but it's part of our DNA to treat people fairly, give them the opportunity, make life flexible. We encourage people to travel. Now, obviously, travel is not possible at the moment,
Yeah.
but when things resume again, we encourage people to travel. Some of our team members actually are digital nomads. They, they travel the world, and they deliver the work from where they're traveling. They have a laptop. They can get on calls on Zoom and Skype, and that works extremely well for us.
Yeah.
We're moving to a new way of thinking. Uh, 21st century is so different from what we had many centuries back in terms of opportunities for traveling, exploring the world, trying different foods, for instance. We need to allow people to do and explore the world more. And I hope there'll be more companies like Goodman Lantern who will allow people to actually not be bound to an office space, but actually get out there and meet new people.
Exactly. And you touched on it earlier around, kind of performance of employees and how, providing the right environment and opportunities can help them excel. I think the key thing there is as well is that, you and other organizations have the strength to not then accept that underperformance of the rest of the teams, be they male or female. And that is further empowerment to an employee, actually. Forget just male and female. And I think there's a lot of organizations out there that just don't do that, and it's very disruptive.
It is, and I think that's a separate topic altogether, in my opinion, which is about how do you motivate teams? How do you get them to be a team player? And I had a massive mind shift around this topic about 2 years back, 1.5, 2 years back. Um, there used to be a time when we used to hire people based solely on their skills, and that was it. If you can do the job, you're great. Let's put you in the company. But 2019, in the beginning of 2019, we had to let go of the entire technology team and hire the tech team again based on our core values, and
Right.
that's super important to us. So we have values around encouragement, experimentation, engaging our teams, integrity, improvement, and these are our core values. And we like our team members to have those core values. So each member is tested for these core values, and if they have it, then they represent the company in the way, for example, I would represent the organization. And as they say, the first 40 members are the company's founders. So I would like everyone to be in the same mindset as myself. Obviously, they won't be the same; they'll be similar in the way we think, but the same core values are inculcated in their DNA as well. And it's harder, it's tricky to find these core values amongst people,
Yeah.
but it's a long-term goal, long-term ambition for the company, and we want to bring in the right people, right bums in the right seats, basically.
So what was that pivotal point then that made you go, something's not right here, this has to change? What brought that to your attention?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things. First thing was that I could see that some members perform better than some others, for example, and this stuck with the company. Were there for the good and bad, as were, and it was like a reflection to kind of see what had gone, what had changed. What was it the main reason why things were good for somebody and not good for others? And I realized that actually it was a fundamental um, kind of belief which people have,
Yeah.
uh, which we didn't check for early on. Was all about, as I said, the skills. If you can write content, if you can code, if you can be a marketeer, great. Uh, but that's changed completely within a
Yeah.
company. Second thing is learning. I spend a lot of time to train myself and the team to become better managers, to become better leaders. And part of that training, I joined an organization where they trained me. And one of the skills was people skills, and core values was the topic which I
Yeah.
learned there. And it's been very important, I believe, for at least for Goodman Lantern.
So in terms of how your business is split, how many kind of, would you say, senior females do you have versus males?
So apart from me and one more gentleman, um, all the other managers are women. Um,
Okay.
so we currently have um, uh, five senior managers within the company, all women. Um, and then there's obviously me, the CEO. and there's one investor, two male, but the ambition is that someone will replace me at some point, and doesn't have to be a man, for example. I really hope actually it's somebody from the senior management team who takes my role eventually. And that's the ambition, to train them to take my position, so I can go and do something else potentially, or help in other departments, for example. I don't want to be working in the business. I work on the business, and my ambition always is to empower my team. So yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that at some point, one of my team members are going to take my role, and I can then maybe have some time to reflect on other opportunities.
Great. Well, you need to send this podcast to all of those managers. They'll be hot on your heels, I'm sure. Talk me through a little bit about how you measure some of these values. What are the types of things that you do with individuals? Is it a gut instinct? Is it psychometric testing? What do you do?
Well, in the interview process, we are keen to learn about not only their their roles within their previous jobs, but also, we ask questions which are more personal in nature. So,
Mm,
for example, give me an example of a time when you took care of a team member, uh, which was not part of your job, for example. Maybe it was a charity, or maybe a family member you helped. And how did you help them become a better individual, for example? How did you help them with something? That shows, for example, how how their belief system is about helping people improve and empowering them, for example. So we look at examples from how to work to
yeah.
kind of figure out they really have the core skills, for instance, which we need for the job they're going to be doing, and not just the technical skills, for example. It's beyond that. Um, Also, I'm actually a programmer by training. I studied AI at university when people didn't even know what AI was. My mom thought AI was studying UFOs for the longest time, for instance.
Oh, love your mum.
Indeed. Um, so within programming, there's a big uh, push towards open source, and open source typically is a labor of love before it becomes commercial. It's a labor of love. You put a lot of time and effort in. A lot of volunteers who are helping to build the ecosystem and the programs. Maybe it's WordPress, maybe it's Android, whatever it is. People volunteer to help out, and we want to see that kind of passion. So we want to see outside work, what do you do, for example. We also sometimes bring people on a sort of a part-time basis, and then help make them full-time, for example, when we
Right.
have contractors on in our third tier. So we have 3 tiers of working with us.
Don't talk
There's
about 3 tiers right now.
I know it's scary, isn't it? These 3 tiers and whatnot. But yeah, this is a complete different 3 tiers. It's not linked to anything that's happening currently. Um, so the aim really is to believe, have a passion for what you do, because if you have passion for what you do, you'll be in it for the long term. One thing I've learned is short-term friendships, short-term employment, short-term work leads to disaster at some point. So the
Mm.
mindset is always long term, thinking long term. People are bringing into the company now, wanting to stay for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years if we can. Hence, it's even harder than normal to kind of bring people in. But that's that's the challenge we deal with every day, and it's the proposition which we bring in a company to help our team members through the tricky times, that keeps them with us for a longer time as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's quite interesting in terms of finding someone in their true authentic state, really, in terms of how they are at home and with family and friends versus how they are in the office. And there's a school of thought that, don't bring stuff from the office home and vice versa. But actually, are we carving out individuals to be separate people, which can be very, very tiring on the mind. But it's interesting to see how they act within that family or social environment to see how they would be within your organization.
Yes, I mean, obviously, as self-employed people, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we most entrepreneurs I know at least, there is a thin line between work and play. It's just like one big chunk of stuff they do. Their entrepreneur friends become their best friends, the best man, the best women at times. For example, when they go out for drinks, it's with those people as well. Um, I think it's almost unfair sometimes to kind of segregate the personal life from the business life. Um, Equally, whether you do that or you don't do that, that's almost not relevant, because the personality of a person is the same at home or work. We're the same people with two different roles, but we bring the same nature and values in both sides of the coin. So um, actually, for example, if I am a caring father, then I'll also hopefully be a caring team member as well. Is the school of thought, and there's a lot of research being done around this. And the reality is that individuals can change their job titles or their roles, but their values remain the same throughout their lives.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that's a nice way of kind of summarizing it, is having those same qualities and values that you apply to both sides, but you may show up slightly different in those two different environments. So in terms of like feedback with your employees and what the women specifically say, how do you engage on that on a regular basis?
Do you mean in terms of the narrative about women empowerment, you mean, or just
Yeah, so in
generally?
terms of how they, how do your female employers kind of recommend you, because they're like, oh, you know what, these guys just get it. It's not just about the female thing, but they get it culturally, they get it in terms of flexibility.
Well, generally speaking, now when we recruit people, they come from recommendations from our current team members. That's been happening for the last year and a half, for example, almost in line with our core value structure change, for example. And it's also a testament of their belief in the company. You know, when the pandemic hit, by March, we knew there's a problem coming our way. But we made sure that we save the jobs of our team members, because it means a lot to them. Some of these women are in countries where the opportunities are not as sort of well placed as, for example, in the UK or US, for
Yeah,
instance. So that the what they earn from Goodman Lantern means a lot to them, and it's our commitment to keep those jobs for them.
yeah,
And as I mentioned, this is a social mission, and if you look at the leaders, um, the ones who made it really big, for example, in technology, digital, or any other business, for example, have a strong social mission behind what they do. And
yeah.
my mission is to empower women. That's what I think about every day. My KPIs, my matrix is like, okay, how many women are currently employing in a company? How many people are we influencing and helping them to run the kitchen, or have a good life, for example, to be flexible? That's the KPIs which I think about every day.
Yeah.
So that's clear in our actions, and our team members recommend, and they love to stay at Goodman Lantern, and they bring in their friends, their family, and if they're obviously a good fit for the company, then we bring them on board as well.
So how many other countries do you employ women in?
So we hire team members mainly in the US, UK, South Africa, India.
Mhm.
But we also hire people in Macedonia, Romania. But I must say South Africa is our biggest area at the moment, for example, and UK is next to South Africa. Because we have native English speakers, we need to bring in people who love what they do, have a passion for writing. Actually, English is their first language, and they really can bring in that skill. In India, we hire technologists, so we hire a lot of programmers, designers. That's where we hire, as it were. But
Right.
again, our again, our mission for hiring women is the same in India as well. So we, our designers, our developers, our testers are we try to promote women to come
Yeah.
in and work for us.
Because I guess that maybe this is, lack of education on my behalf, or naivety, is that when you think of programming and all those sorts of, you can imagine that potentially in India that's more of a male dominated area, and yet we know that coding and programming is massively underrepresented, by women.
That's absolutely true, and that's a global phenomenon. Unfortunately, women don't have the same opportunities in technology as men do, or maybe it's the interest, maybe it is the lack of drive, or maybe the lack of opportunity, but definitely more male than females. And our aim is to represent and give them an opportunity and platform to actually work with us. And we see again same phenomena we see in other countries, that when people work with us, they like us, they stay with us, they recommend us to get their friends and family as well, especially in places like India, where there's a massive churn.
Yeah.
Um, in India, programmers, and they have a lot of opportunities, so they keep jumping around different jobs.
Right.
Um, but to have something like which keeps them down, because they love what they do and they love the company, represents that a belief in the mission of the company.
Yeah. So if you had any advice for organizations, small or large, about bringing living and breathing female empowerment, not necessarily shouting about it and trying to win brownie points, but what would be the top two things that you would recommend organizations could do?
Well, number one is put money where your mouth is. So actually, you know, actually make a difference you know, by actually helping them, empowering them in the right way. For us, we actually employ them, we actually hire them, so we actually put money where the mouth is. That's really important to us. That's one. And number two is, the first step towards this is awareness. Is actually, understand that there is a real reason for a business to actually hire women. um, we've seen, like, banks, for instance, in the past was very male dominated, and we know what happened in 2008, for example, a massive meltdown. If the boardrooms have a balance there, I think we could have saved that catastrophe. If it was Lehman Sisters and Lehman Brothers, we could have been actually in a much better position, for instance. Obviously, we don't know about that. We can't say what way it might be, but I believe fundamentally that a balanced company will go a long way.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know what, I've spoken to a couple of people about it now, and I think in one of my podcasts, I really want to do a what if series. So what if it was just women in power, just for 1 year, in every job, in, be it kings, queens, presidents, whatever, it was just all women. I'm not saying they're going to do a better job, but what an experiment that would be.
It would be, and I think, Rona, from my perspective, it's about the balance. At the moment, it's really imbalanced. There's more men and less women in boardrooms. The ambition is that it's balanced out. I think representation of all kinds, genders, you know, um, caste, race, whatever it is, it's really important. The balance is what we want to focus on, not a unproportional amount of male or female. Is my opinion about this, because that's when we'll have a fair company, boardroom economy. People will be happier, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think you should go as far as transparency in salary? So obviously with places like the BBC, they have to be. And I also know that within different job roles, there are bands of salaries. Someone could be a lot more experienced and delivered greater wins. But do you believe in transparency around salaries?
Well, within our departments, the salaries are transparent. So the content team, the tech team, amongst themselves, they all know what each one earns, because there are tasks and there are roles, and everyone knows what that is. Um, I am thinking about how can we make it even more transparent. I don't know if you know what a company called Buffer.
No.
Buffer, they do social media content management or social media management, and they release their salaries or what they pay from CEO to the assistants online. So everyone knows everywhere what the salaries are.
Yeah.
Now that's a really extreme idea for most companies, but
Yeah.
I'm going to think about that. Is that possible for us? For instance, can we actually release the salaries for all our team members? I don't know yet, but definitely I'm thinking about it.
Okay, well, look forward to that. Well, listen, we've had a great chat. I've really enjoyed it. It's always intriguing for me to chat about female empowerment with a man. And, you know, some people will go, how can a man understand female empowerment and what that means? But I think you've really been able to show where, you know, you've put your money where your mouth is. And I can imagine the teams are very kind of responsive there. So congratulations to you and Goodman Lantern. I wish you all the success, obviously, and with your beautiful daughter growing up in this world. Amazing dad, so I'm sure you'll make a few mistakes for sure. But thank you so much for joining me today, talking about the topic, and I hope the listeners have got something from it, and hopefully a few organisations who can take some lessons on board.
Thank you, Rona, for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, and I really hope so as well. This could be, you know, we can make a small impact for people to think about this and a bit of awareness about women empowerment and equal pay.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
See ya.